At number 10, Mariah Carey. We all know Mariah Carey as the skinny legend that she is, but lately people have been saying that her career is over. Though she's still out here making music and living her best life, there are some who say that her career is over, and it all ended in 2016 during a live mishap that happened at her New Year's Rockin' Eve performance. After building up to her huge performance at the end of the night, she finally took the stage and didn't sing a single note. When she got up to perform, the music started playing and she just stood there saying that she couldn't hear anything, probably in reference to nothing playing in her earpiece. As the music started playing for the audience, Mariah's dancers kept on going in the background and she shared her mic with the audience, getting them to sing for her, but nothing ever came out of her mouth. It was a letdown for a lot of people, and it got a lot of fans wondering why she didn't sing even though there was music playing. For a while now, people have wondered if she's been lip syncing, and there is some evidence to maybe back this up, but what do you guys think? Is Mariah faking it, and is her career really over? At number 9, Carmen. When you're trying to make a name for yourself, engagement is everything. For a lot of performers, they try to get out in front as many people as possible and attract more fans, because doing so will help you grow faster, making you famous. One of the biggest assets you could have when growing your audience is having a successful guest appearance on a late night show like SNL, because of how many viewers can tune in and watch you grow. This is how Lana Del Rey started, but this blessing can also be a curse and can end a few careers as well. Carmen was a music duo who got their start on YouTube by posting covers, though now it's been disbanded and rebranded, and there was a time when they almost reached fame after being musical guests on SNL, but after tanking their performance, they lost it all. They had a large following, and so when the casting director over at SNL found them and invited them to perform on the show, things started to look promising. They came on the show and performed their songs Broken Hearted and I Told You So, and after their performance, the reviews came pouring in, and they weren't very positive. They faced a lot of criticism, saying that they failed to connect with the audience, and one review even claimed that the duo's performance caused, quote, mild auditory distress. After this catastrophic performance, things weren't ever the same, and their careers were pretty much over after that night. Now before I carry on with the list, I'd like to ask you guys to consider leaving a like on this video to help support the channel. At number 8, Paula Deen. Paula Deen was once the wholesome southern mom who loved to cook, but after 2013 she took on a very different label after a lawsuit revealed her racist actions to the world. In 2013, Paula was facing legal action from one of her former employees who alleged that Paula was racist towards her and that she had repeatedly been harassed while working at one of her restaurants. After being deposed, the truth came out about Paula when asked if she had ever used the N-word, and she said yes. After this came out, the floodgates opened and backlash ensued. As anyone would do, Paula went on the defense and even sat down for an interview on the Today Show, but instead of owning up to her actions and trying to clear her name, as most people would try to do in that situation, Paula instead deflected the criticism she was facing and even voiced how she was surprised that so many people were taking offense towards her actions. It was thought that this interview was all for publicity, not for making a public apology, and after this, her career was pretty much done for because there was no coming back from this scandal, especially because she never apologized. At number 7, Howard Dean. When you're on live TV, you want to be engaging and exciting, right? You want to be able to captivate your audience even when you don't have a huge production to back you up. Well, apparently you can take your excitement a little too far, because this could destroy your career. This is what happened with former governor of Vermont, Howard Dean, back in 2004. Dean was a Democratic presidential candidate who was going up against George W. Bush. For a while, Dean was ahead in the polls, leaving the other candidates in the dust, but soon that gap started to close and he had to get more serious about his presidential dream to make them happen. He couldn't afford any other slip-ups because that could cost him the race, but unfortunately for him, that is exactly what happened. In order to get his supporters more engaged, Dean addressed one of his rallies with a very energetic speech, saying that he was going to dominate the polls, win support, and quote, take back the White House. But his speech was a little too riveting and it had the opposite effect.
And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House! Yeah!
The media ended up picking this clip apart and it made him look terrible. It all cost him his presidential hopes, all because he was just trying to be a hype beast. At number 6, Belle Gibson. It's all fun and games until the truth comes out. Health blogger Belle Gibson was really popular a few years ago when she rose to fame promoting her healthy living. Belle made a name for herself as something of a wellness ambassador who promoted clean eating and even released a cookbook called The Whole Pantry. She pretty much based her entire image on the claim that she had been using her healthy eating to manage her brain cancer. But soon, that charade was over and it was revealed that she had been lying about her illness. Belle was never actually sick and she basically just conned everyone. This reveal came about during an interview with the Australian version of 60 Minutes, where her various instances of manipulation were revealed, including, quote, befriending a family with a young boy suffering from cancer in order to gain first-hand information of what the disease entailed, taking money meant for charitable purposes and keeping it, as well as misrepresenting her age, end quote. Though the interview wasn't necessarily live, the information that was shared wasn't cut out and was broadcast to the world. After this interview, she was labeled a fraud and her career stopped dead in its tracks. At number 5, Jamie Kennedy. Imagine having your career be ruined just because your show sucked. Sounds awful, but this is sort of what happened to comedian Jamie Kennedy. Jamie was part of a group of public figures who were hosting a New Year's Eve broadcast in 2012, and though most people thought that this broadcast would just go unnoticed as people partied the night away, it sort of had the opposite effect as many people tuned in to watch the Cringe Fest. Apparently, the show was very poorly put together with a lot of awkward silences, and even their countdown clock being off, so they rang in the new year just a little bit later than everyone else. Most people recall Jamie looking lost on camera, not knowing who to talk to and which camera to look at. It was overall a very bad show and Jamie took the fall for it. His career suffered a lot after that night. At number 4, Bill Maher. When it comes to language, you have to be very wary of the things that you say. We all know that explicit language is not allowed on many programs, take SNL for example, but the one thing that is absolutely forbidden is using slurs. No matter what program you're on, you are not allowed to say such things. I mean, they should never be said, period, but especially on live TV. Some people, though, go against this rule and do it anyway, like Bill Maher. The late night talk show host got himself into heaps of trouble after using the N-word on live TV. On his HBO show Real Time with Bill Maher, he dropped the N-word while talking to Senator Bill Sass. When the senator told Bill that he would like to invite him to visit Nebraska and, quote, have you work in the fields with us, Bill replied, scoffing at the idea, saying, quote, I am a house N-word. After those words left his mouth, the fury came from the public, condemning his use of that word. Though he thought he was using it in a joking manner, that didn't take away from the fact that he actually said it and the severity of his actions. Bill was subsequently ripped apart by his audience and even other late-night personalities like Stephen Colbert. Something as serious as saying a word like that is hard to come back from, and his career hasn't really been the same since. At number 3, Sinead O'Connor. SNL has been hit with controversies in the past, but I think one of the biggest ones I can think of is the one surrounding Sinead O'Connor, the Catholic Church, and SNL. On October 3rd, 1992, Sinead was invited on the show and was asked to perform a few songs from her newest album at the time, and she agreed, but had one request. Instead of performing one of her original songs, she opted to sing a cover of Bob Marley's song War. Though it was a bit of a bizarre request, they allowed it, and so Sinead got up on stage and performed a very dramatic rendition of the song, even switching up some of the lyrics to change the context and meaning. Her performance all led up to where Sinead really made a huge statement where she tore up a photo of the Pope saying, quote, fight the real enemy. Apparently, this whole performance was designed to be a stunt as a means to raise awareness about how the Catholic Church had allegedly been hurting people. Sinead recalled having known people who were hurt by members of the church and she wanted to fight back on their behalf. Well, instead of this helping people like she wanted it to, it instead killed her career, as for the days following this live stunt, the network received thousands of angry calls. Even some celebrities spoke out condemning Sinead for this. Her career never really recovered from this moment, but she still stands by her decision to pull the stunt anyway. At number 2, Milli Vanilli. In the 90s, there was a huge music scandal that ended careers and ended in tragedy. The lip sync scandal that surrounded Milli Vanilli was one of music's biggest scandals, and it revealed that they were never really a real group and that everything was fake. This stage act was put together by German record producer Frank Farian as he attempted to create the next biggest music stars. It worked in theory, but they fell from grace as quickly as they rose. He had a vision to be able to release amazing music, but he needed the perfect people to sell it, and that's where Morvan and Politis came into play. These two dancers were hired to be the bright, shining faces of Milli Vanilli, and though it was a musical act, they never had to sing. In fact, they lip-synced their entire career. Their act was a hit, and it worked for a while, even earning themselves a Grammy for their song Girl You Know It's True, but like all good things, they can never last. Milli Vanilli conquered the Billboard charts, they were asked to tour and perform live, but things started to get difficult for them since this act never really sang, and playing pretend on stage just wasn't cutting it. Eventually, they were caught in the act, so to speak, as their track suddenly stopped working during a live performance, revealing that they were faking it all along. This took a big toll on Morvan and Paulides, especially on their mental health, driving Paulides to take his own life. And finally, at number 1, Natalia Kills. How mean is too mean? Well, for former X Factor New Zealand judge Natalia Kills, she was too mean. After casting some harsh judgment on an X Factor contestant, Natalia was dubbed a bully and saw her career go down the tubes as a result. On the show's second season, contestant Joe Irvin performed a rendition of Michael Bublé's Cry Me a River, and when he finished his performance, that is when all hell broke loose. Natalia criticized his performance harshly, saying that he was a copycat of her husband, saying that he made her feel disgusted and sick. She also said, quote, "As an artist who respects creative integrity and intellectual property, I'm disgusted at how much you have copied from my husband. From the hair to the suit, do you not have any value or respect for originality? You are a laughingstock, it's cheesy, it's disgusting. I personally found it absolutely artistically atrocious," end quote. A lot of people were shocked at how harsh her criticisms were, and so many people were appalled by Natalia's behavior that a petition was made to have her and another judge who was also a little too harsh removed from the show. The petition worked, and they were both booted midway through the season. Following this incident, Natalia was shunned and even went as far as changing her name to deflect some of the scrutiny that she was facing. Her career was truly over after this moment. At number 10, Charlie Sheen. After having a hugely successful career, actor Charlie Sheen started to have a downward spiral. There are many reasons for this, but his struggles became something the media was always covering at the time. Every step he took, every move he made, every single day, the media was surely watching him. Everything sort of came crashing down for him after he did a live interview with 2020 where he ranted about the 2.5 Men creator Chuck Lorre. This interview was all over the place, with Charlie waving his hands about frantically and even going so far as to call Chuck a turd and a clown. The media labeled him as crazy and really just pushed him to his breaking point. I think his career downfall was a combination of his behavior in this interview as well as the media's portrayal of him, making people have a very different opinion on him. It was all very publicized at the time, so maybe if people were a little more understanding and patient with him, things would have been different, but instead, Charlie's career is pretty much done for. At number 9, Doug Williams. Usually when someone's career is demolished on live TV, it's because they've done something or said something. 9 times out of 10, it's their own fault, but here's a story about someone whose career was ended by someone else. Comedian Doug Williams was invited to be part of a comedy roast, a program where a bunch of comedians and other public figures are invited to take the mic and comically roast one of their peers. It can be really funny to watch, at least until the jokes turn to you. Doug here was invited to be part of the lineup at Shaq's All-Star Comedy Roast of football player Emmitt Smith, and after being introduced by host Jamie Foxx, he started his set. After a few punchlines, Jamie started to chime in, putting Doug in the hot seat rather than Emmitt. He started mocking Doug's jokes and punchlines and really just roasted him instead. It was a lot to take in, especially for Doug, who really wasn't expecting the tables to be turned like that. The whole unscripted ordeal was just a mess that ended Doug's career in that moment. Jamie later defended his actions, but that really didn't help the situation. Now, before I go any further, I'd like to ask you guys to consider leaving a big ol' thumbs up on this video if you're enjoying it so far, and also head on over to my gaming channel, Viper Girl, and check that out and subscribe while you're there. At number 8, Jackie Mason. I'm sure we are all aware of how touchy TV networks are about saying expletives. Saying some kind of adult word can cause some serious consequences, but what about hand gestures? Well, it turns out that those are also a huge no-no, and someone actually had their whole career ended because of it. Comedian Jackie Mason had been working on the Ed Sullivan Show for a bit back in the day, and it made him pretty successful. He was given a contract for 6 appearances, which was set to earn him around $45,000, which is more like $350,000 in today's money, since this all happened way back in the 60s. Either way, it was a very well-paying job, only for having to do 6 appearances. Anyway, his entire contract was essentially ripped up after he got in trouble for flipping the bird on stage. Jackie was playing off one of the stage managers who was making gestures with his fingers to indicate how much time he had left, but he went a little too far. He pointed his finger around the room while saying, quote, "Here's a finger for you, and a finger for you, and a finger for you," unquote. This kind of behavior was not allowed, and so he was booted off the show, and his career pretty much ended after that. At number 7, Charles Rocket. The 1980/1981 season of Saturday Night Live was a rocky and controversial one. This all started after executive producer Lorne Michaels took a step back from the show for a year, and the position was filled by Gene Dumanian. Because of this position change, most of the cast left, prompting Gene to have to hire a new cast. This new cast was full of new faces and was untested, so at this point the show was facing a lot of criticisms and bad reviews. Things went from bad to worse for everyone after comedian Charles Rocket dropped an F-bomb during a skit. SNL skits have been quite controversial in the past, and they still face backlash from time to time, but swearing on live TV was really where the show drew the line, and breaking that cardinal rule could be detrimental to your career. During the season's 11th episode, Charles was closing out the show and decided to let an F-bomb fly while referencing a skit that he did earlier where he said, quote, "This is the first time I've been shot in my life. I'd like to know who the F did it," end quote. People seem to believe that he swore on purpose because if you watch the footage back, there isn't any hesitation when he said it. But it could have just been that he didn't know that he couldn't say it, or he didn't realize that he had said it until later. Either way, this was the last straw for the studio, and they fired much of the cast and crew, including Gene and Charles. This whole scandal came so close to sinking the entire show for good, but it did end up destroying Rocket's career after this. At number 6, Jenny Slate. Sometimes your career can make or break you. Doing your job really well can pay off later down the line, but if you mess up, there can be some consequences. The messing up part applies to comedian Jenny Slate because after an incident on SNL cost her job, her career may have been set back a little. Though she's found a lot of success now, back in 2009 when she worked on SNL, she was pretty new to the industry and was looking for something to bring her career to new heights. When she was hired on SNL as a writer and performer, things were looking great for her, but all that excitement turned sour after her first on-air performance. In her first appearance as a member of cast on the show, she was performing one of the sketches that she wrote, and while on air, she accidentally switched up one of her lines, making it a little more adult and dropping an F-bomb. She quickly caught herself saying it, but it was too late. Unfortunately, you can't put the words back in once they've left your mouth. She tried to brush it off, pretending like no one else heard it, but unfortunately, people did hear it. This mistake stuck with her for the rest of the time that she worked there, and she ended up leaving the show after one season. She was fired at the end of the season, not necessarily because of the F-bomb incident, but because she, quote, "didn't do a good job and didn't click." Because she got fired from such a big-time production, it took a little for her to get back on her feet, but she's been doing great since. A minor setback, but nothing major. At number 5, Ashley Simpson. This is one of the cringiest SNL moments and is sometimes referred to as the worst moment in SNL history. Though that's a bit of an extreme title, it was a doozy of a scandal and no one was quick to forget about it, especially Ashley. In 2004, Ashley Simpson was invited on SNL as their musical guest to perform a few songs to promote her newest album at the time, Autobiography. She planned to perform a few songs from said album, and things went off without a hitch as she got into her first song, Pieces of Me. Her performance went pretty well and she got the audience hyped for another song, but that's when things started to go south. As the band set up for the next song, music started playing, but it wasn't what anyone was expecting to hear. A vocal track for Pieces of Me started playing again instead of the next song in her set, revealing that Ashley had been lip-syncing that whole time. She froze on stage, clearly embarrassed, and then she started doing a little embarrassing dance before running off the stage as the show cut to commercial. She tried to brush it off later when they came back on the air, but the cringe was just too much for people to handle. Later on, we found out that Ashley was advised by her father to have the vocal track and just lip sync because she'd been suffering from some severe acid reflux that had been causing damage to her vocal cords, and he just wanted her to rest her voice a little. It was only good intentions that got her into that predicament, but people say that this was the moment that destroyed her career. At number 4, Janet Jackson. The Super Bowl halftime show is the one moment a year that millions of people tune in to watch the same thing. People turn off their reality TV programs and reruns of Jeopardy to grab a snack and watch the year's biggest performance. Well, during the 2004 Super Bowl halftime show, viewers watched a serious wardrobe malfunction happen that was life-changing to say the least. Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake were performing together when a move went wrong and Janet's breast ended up getting exposed. Following the incident the media dubbed Nipplegate, the FCC sued CBS for the live incident in a $550,000 lawsuit citing indecent exposure for their cause. Janet Jackson was really put through the ringer for her part in the whole scandal. As a result, she was uninvited to the Grammy Awards that year, and her songs were blacklisted from the radio. Even the next few albums that she released following the incident was met with negative reviews because of the scandal. If this were to happen now, I doubt she would have been met with such severe backlash. Do you? It was later discovered that this whole incident happened because the two performers had added a costume reveal into their performance at the last minute, and though it was rehearsed, the stunt failed at the last minute, resulting in Janet's exposure. It was all just an accident that ended up destroying someone's career. At number 3, Steve Harvey. When it comes to live TV, the stakes are high since you can't really take anything back. You can't edit out your mistakes, and so when you slip up, everyone gets to witness the cringy affair. This is what happened to Steve Harvey back in 2015 during the Miss Universe competition, where he made one of the biggest mistakes in TV history. It was all coming down to the wire as the final vote was being read, and it was down to the last two contestants, Miss Colombia and Miss Philippines. The drum roll happened and Steve read off the name on the card, crowning Miss Colombia as the winner. There were cheers, but a lot of confusion as well. A few moments later, Steve returned to the stage to announce that he had actually read the card wrong and that Miss Colombia was actually the runner-up. They had to take the crown from Miss Colombia and give it to Miss Philippines, the actual winner. The look on Steve's face in that moment said it all. He knew he was in big trouble. Everything was fixed in the end after that huge mess up, but since this pageant disaster, Steve's presenting career hasn't really been the same. No one can really forget the Miss Universe catastrophe of 2015. At number 2, John Travolta. 2014 was a weird time. There were crises, important world events, and Flappy Bird was removed from the App Store. Yes, that belongs in its own category because I still miss my beloved Flappy Bird. Another event that took place that year was the Oscars, which takes place every year, but 2014 was very special. In 2014, John Travolta created one heck of a meme. In that ceremony that year, John was due to introduce Idina Menzel, the voice of Elsa from Frozen, to hit the stage and sing the hit song Let It Go, and it seemed like a simple enough task, except it wasn't. While John was supposed to introduce Idina to the stage, he instead called on someone named Adele Dazeem. Now, I don't know who this Adele Dazeem character is, but she sure does look a lot like Idina. That moment was embarrassing and caused a number of memes. A John Travolta name generator was even created online, adding to the craziness. The explanation behind the mishap is, according to John, that Idina's name had been changed on the teleprompter at the last minute, so it was spelled phonetically. John hadn't rehearsed a name like that, and so it messed him up, and Adele Dazeem was born. Now, I wouldn't say his career was completely over after this, but his presence on live TV and presenting career definitely took a hit after that. And finally, at number 1, Kelly Osbourne. When you're on live TV, you always have to watch what you say because there's no taking it back, and a lot of celebrities seem to forget that from time to time. During an episode of The View, Kelly Osbourne really messed things up while trying to clap back at Donald Trump, and she faced a lot of backlash from it. Just shortly before this episode aired, Donald Trump, who was at the time only a presidential nominee, was saying offensive things about the Latinx community and how he wanted to deport them. It was a highly controversial topic that really should have been a sign to what was to come, but I digress. Well, in a very poor attempt at clapping back at Trump's comments, Kelly said, quote, "If you kick every Latino out of this country, then who's going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump?" Kelly was trying to defend the Latinx community, but rather than stand up for them, she ended up offending them even more, as her remarks were interpreted as saying that the Latinx community is only good for being housekeepers, like the offensive stereotype depicts. After facing so much backlash and realizing the gravity of her words, Kelly issued an apology saying, quote, "I want to start by saying I always take responsibility for my actions. In this particular case, I will take responsibility for my poor choice of words, but I will not apologize for being a racist, as I am not." End quote. This was one of Kelly's worst moments and certainly led her career to plummet after that.